It was a time when airplanes were made of wood, people were made of steel, and every Pontian dreamed of being a pilot. World War I brought about a real revolution in warfare. Tanks, automatic weapons, submarines, and poison gas. All of this appeared and began to be used on a large scale during this massive conflict. And the battlefields of World War I also became the birthplace of military aviation. People had already tried to use airplanes to kill each other before that, but it was during World War I that aviation emerged as a separate branch of the military, acquired effective weapons, and developed deadly tactics, many of which are still used today. Hundreds of books and academic papers have been written about the air battles of World War I, but much less attention has been given to the pilots themselves, which in my opinion is fundamentally wrong. These people definitely deserve honor and respect because they love the sky much more than their own lives. In this episode, I will try to correct this injustice, and you will learn how the pilots of World War I lived and fought, how they spent their leisure time, and what rules they followed in battle. In addition, I will talk about the most successful aces of the Great War, their victories and failures. My name is Semyon, and I declare the How They Lived series open. Let's begin. The first air ramming and the Fokker scourge. By the beginning of World War I, aviation had outgrown its infancy. Airplanes reached speeds of 200 kilometers per hour, and pilots had mastered many advanced aerobatic maneuvers. However, generals continued to consider airplanes as useless toys for wealthy idlers and did not assign them a special place on the battlefield. The airplanes entered the war unarmed. It was believed that they were only suitable for reconnaissance and adjusting artillery fire. Therefore, the most that pilots could do when they encountered an enemy in the sky was to shake their fists at them furiously. Then they started using revolvers, rifles, and hunting shotguns. However, hitting another plane from a flimsy, swaying aeroplane was only possible by sheer luck. They came up with all sorts of things to fight enemy aeroplanes. Blades to rip open the covering, special nets to entangle the propeller, and bombs with hooks. They dropped them on the enemy.
На врага сбрасывали гири.
Powerful grenades, feathered arrows. Obviously, none of these exotic methods worked, so sometimes pilots chose the most extreme option, an aerial ramming attack. The first to do this was a military pilot of the Russian Empire, Staff Captain Pyotr Nesterov. Yes, that very same Nesterov, the outstanding aerobatic pilot who was the first to perform a loop-the-loop. On September 8, 1914, he rammed an Austrian reconnaissance plane with his Moraine. As a result of the collision, both pilots died. An airplane truly became a fighter only when a machine gun was installed on it. But this turned out to be not so simple. At first, machine guns were mounted on rotating turrets or placed above the upper wing, but none of this was very effective. A forward-firing machine gun was needed, shooting straight ahead in the direction the airplane was moving. However, the plane's own propeller was in the way. The French aviator Roland Garros came up with a simple way to shoot through the propeller. He put steel plates on the blades so that bullets hitting them would ricochet off. The solution had a lot of drawbacks, but it worked. The Germans took a different approach. They installed a synchronizer on the plane, which blocked the machine gun's bolt when the propeller passed in front of the barrel. It was invented by Anton Fokker, a talented German engineer and aircraft designer. And in 1915, he began producing the Fokker E-1 airplane, each of which was equipped with a synchronizer. This simple device almost led to the defeat of the Entente forces in the air. Thanks to it, the Germans gained complete air superiority for several months. The new German airplane was nicknamed the Fokker Scourge. It got to the point where pilots, as soon as they spotted it on the horizon, would immediately land their planes or even refuse to take off at all, not wanting to go to certain death. A stroke of luck helped the Allies avoid total defeat. At the beginning of 1916, one of the German pilots mistakenly landed his aircraft at a French airfield. Engineers disassembled and studied the synchronizer, then simply copied it. The era of aces. The introduction of a working forward-firing machine gun revolutionized military aviation. From that moment on, a real slaughter unfolded over the trenches of World War I, the likes of which history had never seen before. At this time, a new category of heroes appeared, fighter aces, who had dozens of aerial victories to their name. Interestingly, at the beginning of the war, a pilot who shot down 5 enemy planes was considered an ace. Then the threshold shifted to 10 victories, and later it lost its quantitative significance altogether. The word ace itself comes from French, where it means the card ace. It's unknown who first came up with the idea to transfer this term from playing cards to military aviation, but the term not only caught on, it quickly became part of popular culture. Later, it began to be used for experts at operating any kind of machinery, cars, tanks, and so on. Today, the term ace is often even used to refer to a top professional in any field. We've figured out the name, and now let's talk directly about the most famous and successful pilots of the First World War. And of course, we'll start with the Red Baron, Manfred von Richthofen. Manfred von Richthofen is considered the best fighter pilot of World War I. He had 80 confirmed aerial victories. The future ace came to aviation from the cavalry, and before the war he had nothing to do with airplanes. Manfred von Richthofen is better known to the general public by the nickname Red Baron, which he received because of his habit of painting his planes red. Richthofen had a reputation as a fierce and skilled fighter, but he was also known for his sportsmanship and chivalrous attitude toward his opponents. He often allowed enemy pilots to escape when they were in a vulnerable position and never finished off planes that were already on fire. Richthofen also turned out to be a good commander. The squadron under his command, nicknamed the Flying Circus, struck terror into the hearts of their enemies. In 1918, Manfred von Richthofen was shot down over the front line. The exact circumstances of his death are still debated, but most likely the legendary pilot was fatally wounded by a stray bullet from the ground. René Paul Fonck was the second most successful pilot of World War I and the most successful fighter ace of the Entente. He was credited with 75 enemy aircraft shot down. Fonck became famous for his bold air combat tactics. He was repeatedly accused of recklessness, which put his comrades at risk. However, the pilot's effectiveness was beyond praise. Once, in a single day, he shot down 6 enemy aircraft. Fonck became a national hero of France, and his name became synonymous with bravery and skill in the air. René Fonck survived the war unscathed and then continued his career as a pilot. William Avery Bishop, another Allied student pilot who was not far behind René Fonck, was the Canadian William Bishop. He had 72 confirmed victories like the previous 2 on our list. Before the war, he had nothing to do with airplanes. He entered military aviation straight from the classroom. Despite his lack of experience, Bishop quickly became one of the most successful aces. The young Canadian was known for his courage and composure in the face of danger. One day, he flew alone deep into enemy territory, shooting down several enemy planes along the way. For this daring raid, he was awarded the Military Cross, one of the highest honors for bravery in the British Army. William Bishop also survived the war. After the war ended, he continued his career as an aviator. Ernst Udet was the second most successful German ace, with 62 victories to his name. He was known for his aggressive combat methods and his ability to shoot down several enemy planes in a single mission. Udet was also known for his great sense of humor, which made him well liked by his comrades. After the war, he continued his career in aviation. In the 1930s, he cooperated with the Hitler regime. Alexander Kazakov was the most successful fighter pilot of the Russian Empire's army. He had a total of 17 enemy kills. The gap in victories compared to Western pilots highlights both the standard of the Russian army's pilots and the intensity of Eastern Front battles. Although Kazakov himself was undoubtedly a brave man and a skilled pilot, he achieved his first victory by ramming an enemy aircraft, becoming the second person in the world to attempt such a risky maneuver. Kazakov fortunately survived World War I and tragically died in a plane crash in 1919. World War I brought a huge number of new people into combat aviation, many of whom had previously had nothing to do with aviation. Some of them died quickly without gaining any fame, while others achieved outstanding results. During the years of the war, more than 1,800 pilots had 5 or more enemy aircraft shot down to their credit. That is, they could rightfully be called aces. These were very different people, but they were united by courage, fighting spirit, a competitive nature, high-level piloting skills, and the ability to shoot with sniper-like accuracy. Knights of the Sky. The pilots of the First World War were surrounded by a romantic aura. They were called Knights of the Sky, and it must be admitted that there were good reasons for this. It should be understood that before the war, aviation was a small and close-knit world where everyone knew each other. If not in person, then at least by letter. You have to admit, it's hard to shoot at someone you once competed with in some contest or exchanged letters about the merits of a new airplane. At the beginning of the war, many pilots considered enemy pilots their fellow aviators and would greet them joyfully when they met in the sky. But such an aviation idyll did not last long. As the war dragged on and became more brutal, pilots began to greet each other more and more often with shots from their sidearms and then with bursts of machine gun fire. However, even after the start of full-scale air battles, a certain code of conduct among pilots remained. For example, it was considered shameful to finish off already burning planes or to shoot at an enemy who had bailed out with a parachute. Pilots of the First World War rarely had the intention to kill their opponent at all. Moreover, if there was a chance to spare the enemy pilot's life, it was usually done, since the main goal of the pilot was to destroy the airplane. It was not uncommon for a pilot who shot down an enemy plane to try to capture the pilot himself before the infantry did, so that he could arrange something similar for him, to welcome him, discuss recent events and just general thoughts, after which, of course, he would be sent to official custody. Pilots also always tried to send a message to the other side about the capture or death of a particular pilot. Once, the famous Russian pilot Krutin landed near the Fokker he had shot down wanting to help the enemy pilot, but he was already dead. In the documents of this pilot, Krutin found a photograph of the deceased with his wife and son. This touched the pilot. Flying over the enemy airfield, Krutin dropped a package containing the photo and a note. "Mourn your slain husband and father. But war is war. If I hadn't gotten him, he would have gotten me." Here's another example of chivalrous behavior. In the fall of 1917, two aces met in the skies over eastern France, the German Ernst Udet and the Frenchman Gunnemer. During the dogfight, Udet's machine gun jammed, making him an easy target for his opponent. However, Gunnemer did not shoot. He flew alongside the German's plane, smiled and waved at him. Udet safely returned to his airfield. Subsequently, after increasing her official tally, Dasha achieved more victories. Such displays of chivalry can be easily explained. Yes, pilots of the First World War fought bravely and could die any day, but their lives were nothing compared to the life of an infantryman in any of the fighting armies. Pilots didn't have to sit in lice-infested trenches, constantly waiting for a gas attack or an artillery barrage. After a flight, they could expect a normal bed in the safety of the rear, a glass of wine, and friendly company. In such conditions, it was possible to play at being knights. Iconic fighter planes of World War I. When it comes to the iconic fighters of the Great War, perhaps one of the top spots on this list goes to the German Fokker E-1. It was the first aircraft to be equipped with a machine gun fitted with synchronization gear. For its time, it became a true game-changing weapon, radically altering the situation on the Western Front and almost giving Germany victory in the air. Among Allied pilots, this aircraft received the very telling nickname Fokker Scourge. The German monopoly was short-lived. In the spring of 1916, Fokker faced worthy competitors, the British DH-2 and the French Nieuport A-11. They were faster and more maneuverable than the German fighters and had powerful armament. The Germans' response was not long in coming. By the end of 1916, the Albatros DI first appeared at the front, followed by the Albatros D2 with a more powerful engine and two forward-firing machine guns. In the spring of 1917, these aircraft caused real havoc for the Allies in the sky. French and British sources refer to April 1917 as nothing less than bloody. The Allies' response to the appearance of the Albatros was the legendary Sopwith Camel biplane, which had outstanding characteristics for its time. This aircraft had excellent speed and phenomenal maneuverability, which was extremely important for dogfights on the Western Front. It caused real devastation among the ranks of German pilots. By the end of the war, camels had shot down 2,790 enemy airplanes. At the beginning of 1918, when Germany's defeat was obvious to everyone, the somber Teutonic genius presented the world with another magnificent airplane, the Fokker D-7. It was so good that people at the front started talking about the new Fokker scourge. And in the draft peace treaty, the Allies demanded that Germany destroy all of their Fokker D-7 SE. At the end of the war, the Germans released another plane, the Fokker D-8, which, although it did not affect the outcome of the conflict, earned the honorable title of the most advanced fighter of the First World War. Bombers of the First World War. The First World War marked the birth not only of fighter aviation but also of bomber aviation. Moreover, it can be said that bombers reached the front even earlier than fighters. At first, it was pure improvisation. Pilots simply dropped hand grenades and small bombs on enemy soldiers. Then the Germans began to use fléchettes, feathered steel darts, which were especially effective against enemy troops on the march. On August 30th, 1914, German airplanes bombed Paris for the first time. 4 hand grenades were dropped on the city, resulting in the death of 1 woman. It should be understood that at the beginning of World War I, the main bombing force was not airplanes but airships, which could travel several thousand kilometers and drop tons of bombs on the enemy. However, these machines were too unwieldy, vulnerable, and explosive, so abandoning them was only a matter of time. By the beginning of the war, only the Russian Empire had a heavy multi-engine aircraft in service, capable of carrying a serious bomb load. This aircraft was called Ilya Muromets, and it was created by the talented Kiev native Igor Sikorsky. During the years of the war, 76 aircraft of this type were produced. The Ilya Muromets could carry up to 500 kilograms of bombs on board. It had 8 machine guns and was quite capable of defending itself. None of the other participants in the conflict had anything like it, but they quickly began to catch up. Bombers were developed by Ferdinand Zeppelin's company. In 1916, it produced the VGO-3, a heavy machine with a bomb load of 2,000 kilograms and a range of 600 kilometers. These airplanes regularly bombed London and other English cities. In 1917, the Germans created the heaviest bomber of the First World War, the R-14. It could carry up to 4 tons of bombs on board. France and Britain focused mainly on creating light and medium bombers designed to strike enemy troops and their immediate rear areas. They did not bomb German cities. Combat operations contributed to the development of bomber aircraft. If in 1914 aviators dropped bombs and grenades from their planes by hand, by the end of the war combat aircraft were equipped with telescopic bomb sights and electrically released bomb racks. Work began on the development of guided and glide bombs. World War I was undoubtedly an event of unprecedented tragedy. However, at the same time, it gave a powerful boost to scientific and technological progress, including in the field of aeronautics. People realized that airplanes could be not only an expensive toy for the chosen few, but also bring benefits to society as a whole. It's no wonder the following 2 decades are called the Golden Age of Aviation. As for the pilots of the First World War, they were truly knights of the air, fearless and daring. But most importantly, despite all the horrors of the bloody carnage, they managed to preserve their human qualities, which deserves great respect. Subscribe to the channel and see you in the next episode.